Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. This is one of those stories that lingers long after you finish reading it. Not because it's loud or dramatic, but because it's quiet and deeply unfair. It's the kind of story that reminds you how quickly love can turn into confusion and how betrayal can wear the mask of a misunderstanding. His name is Ethan. He's 21 now, living in a small, quiet town just outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. When this story happened, he was just 20, still trying to make sense of what had happened to the one relationship that had meant everything to him. He had been with his girlfriend, Camille, since he was 18. She was a little older, 26 at the time, but that never bothered either of them. If anything, it added something beautiful to what they had. Camille was his first everything. First kiss, first real relationship, first time. For 2 years, Ethan was sure she was the one. Then it all fell apart, in a matter of hours. A few months ago, Ethan had gone to a birthday party for one of his closest friends, a woman named Riley. She had just turned 23, and Ethan couldn't miss it. Camille, unfortunately, was stuck with work and couldn't make it. Riley had been one of Ethan's best friends since community college. The two were close, platonically close. There was never anything romantic between them, especially since Riley had come out as a lesbian years ago. Ethan had even talked to Camille about Riley many times. She knew about her. She knew their history. Or at least, he thought she did. At the party, someone took a few photos and short videos. There was one of Ethan hugging Riley, another where she climbed onto his back so he could carry her across the yard to the cake because her heels were sinking into the grass. They laughed about it, and the night moved on. Ethan texted Camille throughout the evening, just small updates, telling her he missed her, that he wished she were there. But when he got home, the air in the apartment felt different, cold, stiff. Camille was waiting for him on the couch, phone in hand, tears already welling up in her eyes. She asked him straight out if he had cheated. He blinked in disbelief. He asked, "With who?" She showed him the photos, the video. She looked like she wanted to believe him, but she didn't. Not really. Ethan reminded her that Riley was gay, that she had a girlfriend of her own. He even talked to her about the messages he'd sent during the night, trying to reassure her in every way he could. But it wasn't enough. She left. No warning, no discussion. Just slammed the door on 2 years of memories and vanished into silence. Ethan says he was heartbroken, and even now the way he describes it feels like a wound that never quite healed. He tried to dull the ache with long walks, late nights with friends, and too much weed, anything to keep the silence from swallowing him. It helped, barely, but not enough. Then, 2 months later, she reached out. Camille said she'd made a mistake. She said she believed him now, that she knew Riley was gay, and that she had overreacted. She wanted to talk. She wanted another chance. But there was a catch. In that same message, Camille confessed that the night she broke off with Ethan, she'd gone home with someone else, someone she said had been there for her. She admitted that she had slept with him that very night. And now she was offering Ethan what she called a free pass, permission to sleep with anyone he wanted, no questions asked, in exchange for a fresh start. Ethan didn't answer right away. He sat with the message open, staring at it for hours. The woman he'd trusted more than anyone else had broken things off on a false accusation, jumped into bed with another man the same night, and now expected him to match that betrayal just to even the score? He said no. That's when the name-calling started. She called him cold, immature, petty. She said he was throwing away something beautiful over one mistake. But for Ethan, it wasn't just one mistake. It was everything. The distrust, the rashness, the infidelity, the way she treated his love like it was something she could gamble with and buy back later. And deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she'd already been talking to that other guy before she ever accused him. Maybe the whole confrontation was a setup, a way to make the breakup feel justified. We'll never know for sure. But Ethan did know one thing. He deserved better. He wasn't the villain in this story. He was the one who stayed loyal, who communicated, who trusted. And when all that was thrown away like it meant nothing, he didn't chase after the person who broke him. He chose to walk away. And for that, I hope he finds peace, and someone who never asks him to prove his innocence again. She never needed evidence to condemn him. All it took was a picture, a misunderstanding, and her own insecurity to rewrite everything they had. And maybe, in some cruel way, that said everything Ethan needed to know. Camille hadn't just walked away from their relationship, she'd sprinted into the arms of someone else. That kind of behavior, that impulse to believe the worst and then throw herself into a rebound without a second thought, it wasn't a one-time red flag. It was a pattern, a truth she'd kept hidden behind soft words and fleeting smiles. Yes, she was older, 26 to Ethan's 21, but in the aftermath of it all, it became painfully clear who had carried the emotional maturity in the relationship. People online started to piece together what Ethan had already begun to suspect, that Camille had likely been speaking to the other guy well before the breakup, if not physically cheating, then emotionally. And when the opportunity came, she used the most fragile excuse, a piggyback ride with a lesbian friend, to end things without admitting what she was truly chasing. She wasn't ending it because Ethan had done anything wrong. She was ending it because someone else had caught her attention. And once she had what she wanted, she doubled back, hoping Ethan would still be there, waiting with open arms, like some kind of backup plan, a consolation prize. But Ethan wasn't going to let himself be rewrapped and reused. About 7 hours after his original post, Ethan came back with an update. He hadn't slept, not because of guilt or confusion, but because his phone wouldn't stop lighting up. Messages from strangers offering support, advice, or just solidarity. And messages from Camille too, one after another, saying she was sorry, asking if they could talk, even blaming him again, saying that he hadn't told her the full story. But this time, Ethan wasn't going to let her twist the narrative. He needed to set the record straight. He revealed that Camille had confessed to texting the guy she slept with since Ethan was 19. That meant she had been talking to him for over a year while still with Ethan. She claimed it was just friendly at first, but the day after she broke things off, they jumped into bed and officially became a couple. And that guy, Ethan knew him. His name was Nolan, and he was no stranger. Back in high school, when Ethan was a quiet, overweight freshman in Glendale, Nolan had been a senior, loud, cruel, and relentless. He used to torment Ethan in the hallways with insults and laughter that echoed far longer than they should have. He never forgot the sting of those years, though he did his best to forgive and move on. He even worked hard, dropped the weight, changed his lifestyle. But now it felt like the past had come back for revenge. Nolan had reached out to Camille out of nowhere, started up a conversation, and planted seeds. Later, Camille told Ethan the truth, that Nolan had admitted to sending her those party photos of Ethan just to start drama. He didn't even care about her. He just wanted to stir things up. And after sleeping with her, Nolan had moved on to another girl and cheated again. Ethan had every reason to be furious, to fight back, to lash out. But he didn't. He decided to walk away. He blocked Camille after hours of pleading and name-calling, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a small flicker of peace. In his post, he reflected on how they met. It was at a party, one he probably shouldn't have even been at. He was 17 at the time, and she was already in her early 20s. She approached him first. He was upfront about his age, and instead of walking away, she stayed. They talked, they laughed, and when he turned 18, they officially started dating. Ethan remembered the early days with bittersweet clarity. By their third date, they were intimate. It all moved fast, but it felt right. Until it didn't. During the 2 years they were together, Ethan never cheated, never flirted, never even gave her a reason to doubt him. He gave her his social media passwords, like she'd asked. She gave him hers too. But Ethan never once checked, because he trusted her. And maybe that was his only mistake. Now, with Camille gone and the truth laid bare, Ethan was finally beginning to heal. Slowly, quietly. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. He wouldn't be anyone's second choice again. As for that free pass Camille had once dangled like a twisted apology, maybe someday, Ethan thought, he'd use it. Not out of revenge, but as a reminder that he had the power to choose what came next. And this time, it would be something real. There's a certain kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just lingers. It waits in the background, showing up in the quiet moments when you're trying to convince yourself that it wasn't as bad as it felt. That maybe she didn't mean to hurt you the way she did. But Ethan knew better now. Camille had made her choices long before the breakup. People say that hindsight is 20/20, but for Ethan it was like watching a film in reverse and realizing how every scene had been staged. She had spent months laying the foundation with Nolan while still holding Ethan's hand. It was all so clear now. She didn't just stumble into that rebound, she had prepared for it. There had been signs, the way she'd pull away emotionally some nights, how her phone was always on silent, the sudden, sharp questions about loyalty that had no trigger. She wasn't reacting to what Ethan had done, she was projecting what she was already doing. It was a kind of betrayal that didn't leave bruises, but somehow still left scars. The worst part wasn't even the cheating, it was how easily she turned the blame on him, accused him of something he hadn't done with someone she knew couldn't have been a threat. Then when it all crumbled in her hands, she offered him a consolation prize, a free pass, as if intimacy were a transaction that could be traded and balanced. And to make it all more twisted, the man she ran to, Nolan, wasn't just a stranger. It was someone Ethan had once feared, the boy who used to laugh at his weight, taunt him in the hallways, push his books to the floor. High school had been a battlefield, and Nolan had been the worst kind of enemy, cruel without reason. And now years later, that same boy had become Camille's comfort, her first call when she needed an escape route from her own guilt. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation wrapped in heartbreak. Ethan had every reason to fight, to scream, to lash out, but he didn't. He chose peace. He blocked Camille after hours of her messages, first apologies, then excuses, then accusations again when she didn't get what she wanted. And in that silence that followed, Ethan realized he was finally starting to breathe again. There was no need to defend himself to someone who had never believed him in the first place. He thought back to the beginning, when they first met at that party in Prescott. He was just 17 then, and she had approached him first, curious, charming. He was upfront about his age, and instead of walking away, she leaned in. They talked about books, music, and their dreams under a string of backyard lights. It felt magical. But now he wondered if he'd been the only one who thought it was real. From that moment on, he had given her every part of himself, and now there was nothing left to explain, nothing left to fix. In one final post, Ethan thanked the people who had supported him, Strangers, really, but ones who spoke with more clarity and compassion than the woman he had once planned a future with. He wasn't looking for validation. He was just trying to remind himself he wasn't crazy, that it wasn't weakness to walk away from someone who didn't value you. The top comment put it best: "You don't need more reasons to walk away. You've got enough already to build a wall and never look back." Another person added, "Classic cheater move. Cheat, hide it, and accuse you first to soften the blow. Then throw in a free pass like that erases the damage. She didn't choose a stranger. She chose the person who once made your life hell." It was another slap in the face, sure, but it also clarified everything. And then came the most important realization of all. This wasn't Ethan's battle anymore. He had survived it, quietly, with dignity, and while the pain hadn't left completely, it no longer controlled him. What came next in the original thread was a different story entirely, from a different person, but the timing almost felt poetic, because pain, it seems, is a universal thread. It weaves through all of us, different shapes, different names, same ache. Ethan's story didn't end with revenge. It didn't end with a dramatic showdown or grand closure. It ended with quiet. And sometimes that's enough. The process was draining, but Ethan knew it had to be done. When his attorney, a friend of a friend, agreed to help him challenge the restraining order, Ethan felt hope flicker again for the first time in weeks. Not because he wanted to reopen old wounds, but because he simply wanted to live in peace. He had come so far in rebuilding his life, and it didn't seem fair that Camille's presence, unannounced and unexpected, could undo all of it. The goal was simple: request the judge to modify the order into a basic no-contact agreement, removing the distance requirement so he wouldn't be forced out of the apartment he now shared with his girlfriend. Ethan's attorney, a friend of a friend, gathered character references from his parole officer, his employer, and his AA sponsor, all of whom had watched him struggle, fail, and rise again. When the day came, Ethan stood before the judge and told the truth. He didn't sugarcoat the past. He admitted that he had been broken once, young, impulsive, emotionally wrecked. But he had faced it. He had taken every punishment handed to him, attended every counseling session, served his time, followed every rule. He'd been sober for over a year and a half. His job evaluations were stellar. His AA sponsors spoke of Ethan's honesty, his determination, the way he never made excuses even on his worst days. Ethan had been sleeping on a friend's couch while waiting for the court date, just to avoid violating the restraining order. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want conflict. He just wanted to keep the quiet life he had built from the rubble Camille left behind. And then the unexpected happened. The judge asked Camille to speak. Ethan had braced himself for resentment, for anger, for her to ask that the order remain untouched. Instead, she surprised them both. She said she was shocked by the change she had seen in him, that from what she could tell, he wasn't the same person she remembered. She even admitted that she hadn't known he already lived in the building, and that she didn't believe he posed a threat to her anymore. She didn't think it was fair to ask him to leave. Ethan stood there, stunned. Even his lawyer glanced over, eyebrows raised. The judge listened carefully, weighing the statements, flipping through the references and reports. After a long silence, he finally spoke. He said he wouldn't modify the order, he would lift it entirely. Not because Ethan had done nothing wrong, but because he had done everything right since. He said the order had served its purpose. It had given Camille peace and Ethan accountability. But it no longer made sense to keep it in place when both parties were clearly trying to move on. He looked Ethan in the eyes and warned him gently, "Don't forget where you've been. It doesn't take much to end up back in this courtroom." Ethan nodded, the words heavy but deserved. He told the judge he had no intention of contacting Camille and that he was just grateful not to be uprooted again. That night, he returned to his apartment, not as a man in hiding, but as someone allowed to stay, someone allowed to breathe. His girlfriend cried when he told her the news. Quiet tears, relief more than anything. That weekend, they unpacked together, finally settling into a space that had felt temporary for too long. For once, Ethan didn't feel like he was walking on eggshells. He didn't feel like he was waiting for the past to knock on his door and take everything from him again. The comments on the thread mirrored the complicated emotions Ethan felt. Many congratulated him for turning his life around. Some were skeptical. A few sympathized with Camille and said they wouldn't have blamed her if she'd chosen to keep the order in place. And they were right, in a way. She had every reason to feel fear after what happened. But forgiveness, or at least neutrality, had won out in the end. Not everyone gets that. Ethan knew how lucky he was. Still, that luck had been earned, not granted. He had paid dearly, not just with jail time and therapy, but with years of silence, shame, and reflection. The hardest part about change isn't admitting who you were. It's staying committed to who you want to become. And for Ethan, that meant continuing to walk forward, even if the path behind him would always cast a long shadow. It was supposed to be something small, a quiet weekend getaway. Nothing dramatic, just a handful of close friends gathering to celebrate the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. That's all Madison had in mind for her bachelorette party. Something low-key, intimate, and within reach financially. After everything she'd been through the past year, that simplicity was something she clung to tightly. But even the simplest things can get complicated when other people bring their egos into the room. Her brother, Caleb, had been dating a woman named Haley for just under 3 months. Madison had really tried to build a bridge with her. She initiated dinner invites, sat through conversations about fashion and skincare routines she didn't care about, and even agreed to try one of Haley's favorite yoga studios. But the truth was, they didn't click. Madison thought Haley was pretentious and cold. Haley thought Madison lacked refinement. It was clear from the start they didn't speak the same emotional language. Still, Caleb kept pushing for Haley to be included in everything. And when it came time to plan the bachelorette party, he all but begged Madison to invite her. She eventually did, more for Caleb than anyone else. But when Haley learned it was going to be a small, local celebration, she turned her nose up and said something had come up that weekend. No further explanation, just a brush-off. Madison didn't think much of it. Honestly, she was relieved. Avoiding the tension would make the weekend easier. But then, something unexpected happened. Her friends, those who had stood beside her through heartbreak, who had held her hand through hard nights, decided to surprise her. Through a patchwork of favors and travel points, they pulled together a weekend that was far more extravagant than anything Madison had imagined. One friend's aunt worked at a spa and arranged discounted treatments. Another used hotel rewards to book a gorgeous suite with mountain views. It wasn't planned from the start. It was spontaneous, last minute, and completely out of love. Madison had no idea what was happening until the day it began. And when she saw it all unfold, she cried, not because of the luxury, but because of the thoughtfulness. It had been so long since someone did something kind for her without strings attached. The photos they posted that weekend were filled with smiles, champagne glasses, robes, and genuine joy. And then the messages started. Haley had seen the pictures. Suddenly, her tone changed. She was furious. She claimed she would have made time if she'd known it would have been worth it. Madison's heart sank reading those words, not because of the anger, but because of what they revealed. Haley hadn't bowed out because of scheduling. She bowed out because she didn't see value in showing up for Madison unless there was something in it for her. Caleb was quick to jump in, scolding Madison for not reaching out again when plans changed. But Madison hadn't even known about the changes herself. She tried to explain, but the more she spoke, the more twisted the accusations became. She started to wonder if her friends had left Haley out on purpose. Maybe they had. Maybe they were tired of watching Madison bend for someone who only ever made her feel small. Online, strangers offered their thoughts. Most said what Madison needed to hear, that she wasn't at fault, that Haley made her choice when she said she was too busy. No one is obligated to chase after someone who already said no. One commenter said it best. If Haley thought a small gathering wasn't worth her time, she shouldn't be angry now that she missed something better. That's the cost of judgment. Another added, "You don't owe her a second invitation just because your friends cared more than she did." But the comment that hit Madison the hardest came from someone who said, "You invited her as a favor to your brother. She rejected you. And now you're expected to apologize for giving your heart to people who actually wanted to be there? That's not how love works. That's not how respect works." Madison didn't respond to Haley again. She didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the only answer people like that deserve. Madison knew she didn't owe Haley anything more than civility, and even that was starting to feel like too much. She decided then and there, if Haley ever showed up again, it would be only as Caleb's +1, never as her friend, and certainly never because she felt pressured to make space for someone who treated her like an obligation. One commenter captured the heart of the matter. "You're not the one in the wrong. Honestly, your brother seems more at fault here. He pressured you into inviting someone who didn't respect you, and now he's blaming you for her own choices." It hurt, not just the drama with Haley, but realizing Caleb might have known more than he admitted. Maybe he knew Haley never planned to come, or maybe he just didn't care enough to see how much it cost Madison to include someone who made her feel so small. In the end, Madison let go. Of the guilt, of the hope that Haley might come around, of the belief that Caleb would ever fully understand. Some people only show up when there's something in it for them, and some never show up at all. Stories like Madison's aren't rare. So many of us have been asked, quietly or loudly, to shrink ourselves to make space for someone else's pride or ego. But life is too short to make room for people who wouldn't do the same for you. If you're facing a toxic dynamic, especially within family or close social circles, it's important to set emotional boundaries. It's not about being cruel, it's about protecting your peace. If someone shows you they don't respect you, believe them the first time. And if they try to make you responsible for their choices, remember, their decisions are not your burden to carry. One practical tip: communicate clearly once, then stop explaining. You don't need to justify why you won't keep inviting someone who treats you poorly. Surround yourself with people who lift you, who don't make you second-guess your worth. Most importantly, trust your gut. You don't need to wait for betrayal to give yourself permission to walk away. Sometimes healing means choosing not to reopen the door.